Spotlight on Lee's Summit. Today I have with me the historic Browning owner, Liesl Hays. Liesl, welcome.
Hi, Nick. How are you?
I'm good. This podcast, this interview is really just we want to talk to people who have and run small businesses in Lee Summit and what they're doing, why they chose Lee Summit, what drew them in. So let's start first with the historic Browning. What is your historic Browning?
So, the Historic Browning is a guest house that is located in downtown Lee Summit, Missouri. And it is your premier getaway, located really close to places where you can eat, shop, play. There's so many great things in this community. So, that's how I summarize the Browning. It's just your getaway in a location that you would love to visit.
It's a little different because it was the historic Browning bed and breakfast, and now you're
Yes.
calling it the guest house. Some of that is a pivot based on what's happened recently, what's happened from the pandemic and how you've changed. So what is the difference now between what was the bed and breakfast and what is the guest house?
No, Nick, great question. So I think, we all had a lot of things happen to us during COVID. I mean, it's a challenge that businesses have had to face, and we've had to get really creative as entrepreneurs around how are we going to keep serving our clients. And so we are really seeing a trend in the hospitality industry that is all focused on people feel more comfortable going to Airbnbs or VRBOs where there is no one else on property but the individuals that they've brought along for the journey. So we've pivoted our business to really focus on how are we meeting our consumer needs. So before we had individual rooms where people could rent them out, and now we are just doing whole house rentals exclusively.
Was that a little scary, or was there a point? I mean, look, we're all going to say it was scary, right? But I mean, was there? I guess what was that like when you kind of realized I've got to change something if I want to keep this going?
Well, I mean, I think most of us as entrepreneurs don't, it's hard to make that pivot. We know it's important, but it's also scary because we built the entire Browning brand around, having those individual stays. And so we're having to reset expectations with consumers, which is tough. We have a lot of regulars that, they're reaching out to us and we're having to explain the changes. And so, like anything, I think jumping into the change is hard and it's scary. But I think we also recognize that if we don't do it and the longer we wait, we will eventually become irrelevant.
There was a period of time where you weren't doing any business there, and unlike restaurants and some retail, you couldn't really shift to an online service. You didn't have any to go orders, right? So what were you doing? Was that just taking the time to think about this pivot and what you needed to do?
So, one of the unique things about the hospitality industry is that we were technically still allowed to be open, just even with all of the regulations. That being said, we were open, but we weren't open
Right.
because everyone canceled their reservations. So, we actually had 0% occupancy for about 2 months in March and April, which is tough for us because, this is the kickoff to our high season. And so we really had to use that time to think about, how are we going to meet consumer demands and how are we going to pivot our business so we can continue to deliver a great experience to our customers.
Well, let's break away from the COVID talk a little bit and let's go backward and talk about why you started. You are you studied diseases and biology in college, and then you went on to be an HR executive. So bed and breakfast isn't really your wasn't your calling, I guess.
Hey, are you saying that's not a normal career trajectory?
Well, look, I'm not gonna say anything because I've gone a weird kind of circle winding route myself. But what kind of drew you in to buy this old historic home in downtown Lee Summit and then say, hey, I'm gonna drop everything and I'm gonna own a bed and breakfast or now a guest house?
Yeah, I mean, so I was at a place in my life where I was working 60 hours a week, totally my choice. I do that to myself. It's not the corporate, like, it's not the corporate man's fault, but like, I just got to that place in my life, working 60 hours a week, pushing myself so hard and not having time for the things that really mattered in my life. And so, my husband and I made a decision at one point where we were like, this is just not working. We have to try something different. I don't know what it is, but we need to go out in search of a new story. And I always talk about the browning. It really does have a special place in my heart because I know I'm going to be cheesy. It's Munich. But like, I remember walking into the browning for the first time with my family during downtown days. And we went and toured the property. And I just felt like the universe was like, this is the next part of your story. There's a lot of healing that has come from that property and just our family in general. And it was meant for us. It doesn't necessarily align on the resume of all the things that I've done before. But, us entrepreneurs don't really like cookie cutter trajectories anyway. We kind of dabble in different places. And so it just happened to be the right thing at the right time.
What was it that felt right? What did you see? Was it the house itself? Was it the area? Did you immediately know I'm going to use this for a bed and breakfast?
So we actually had talked about purchasing a bed and breakfast, and my husband was the one who found this home online. So a little note about the browning, we didn't actually buy it as a business. It was a single family home. So we were looking for houses that were fit a certain archetype, which is tough, right? The browning was built in 1889. There aren't a lot of historic homes that exist. I mean, there are some in this area, but not necessarily in close proximity to downtown. And so it just happened where I felt like all the stars aligned, and we talked about opening an inn, and Harlan found, the browning listed online, and it just felt so right when we walked into it.
What tell me a little about that relationship between the area and the things that you like that made it all kind of fit, because like you said, there are a lot of historic homes around, but there's a certain appeal, I guess, to both location and look.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the best things about downtown Lee Summit is that it has a really active community, of business owners. There's obviously the Downtown Main Street organization. And so downtown Lee Summit is really just, I feel like it's on this tipping point of becoming an amazing destination location. There are incredible things to do down there. And then there's also just the infrastructure of people who are really committed to downtown's mission and all of the really cool things that are happening. So that was such a win when we were looking as business owners, what area are we going to pick? Downtown Lee Summit was just, they were ready for us, and we didn't have to do a lot of work, which was nice. It's kind of nice when everybody else does the work for you, right?
You know what, that should be in
community.
everybody's business plan is,
Yes.
how can I launch something where most other people have done a lot of the work
Yeah,
for me?
I think that's perfect.
That's
Yeah,
that's
that
the
should
way to do it.
definitely be in the beginning of all really good business plans.
What are some changes you've had to make through the what are we 5 6 years in?
Yeah, we're almost at 4 years.
Almost to 4 years. Okay, I was giving you a couple extra years in
Yeah,
there.
you're good. I appreciate it.
But what are some of the big changes other than what we just talked about, the pivot during the pandemic? But what are some other things that maybe you didn't see that you had to change? And
Yeah. So Airbnb was a big one. And gosh, Airbnb is almost like the Amazon of the retail world. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's like, if you can't beat them, join them. And I had so many guests tell me on the front end, you got to get on Airbnb. You have to be thinking about the vacation rental concept. And I was really averse to that in the beginning. I just wanted to have our own reservation system, wanted to do all the things that way. And then, there's this player in the market that's just killing it. And I know right now, obviously, they're really struggling. But a couple of years ago, not being on Airbnb was detrimental to our business. So we did make that pivot. They're the only site outside of our own that we actually, invest the time and energy into. And 40% of our bookings come through Airbnb.
wow.
So it was one of those things where we made the right decision, and we just had to adjust the experience and figure out what those travelers wanted, because it was very different than what our traditional customers wanted.
You said earlier that as entrepreneurs, we dabble in a lot of different things. So you're not just an inn owner. You also are working on some other projects. You are working on a book, which
That's also changed.
seems to take a lot of time and effort on your end. Tell us what that is.
So right now I'm writing a book. It's actually a memoir. And funny enough, this is another one of those things that changed. I started writing a book on a topic that I thought was right. And I quickly discovered as I'm starting to, I got, gosh, I probably was 40,000 words into this manuscript and recognized that I was writing about the wrong thing. And so I quickly was like, okay, do I just finish this book to get it out there, or do I write about the right thing that's meant to be out there? And so I pivoted again and just said, I'm going to focus on this being a memoir. It doesn't mean the content that I've created won't be used for something else, but totally changed the game on that one too.
Well, what is the? I guess what was the purpose for saying I'm gonna write a book? Was that part of a business plan for something else, or was it just you were sitting on your deck one night and thought, I got things to say?
Yeah, I do have things to say, but I've actually wanted to write a book since I was a little girl. I used to like just write stories. Word Perfect 97. Do you remember Word Perfect 97?
I do.
97 or
I
91?
do.
No, it was 91. Word Perfect 91.
For those of us of a certain age.
For those of us of a certain age. So I remember I would just write pages and pages of stories. I've always been a writer. It's just been in my DNA for a long time, and I've always wanted to write a book. And now I'm just writing about the thing that I'm supposed to write about. So I'll let you know how it goes.
All right. Well, now I have to ask the actual question. What is the thing you're writing about?
So I'm actually writing about just the transformation that's happened in our lives over the last 4 years. So from leaving the corporate job to recognizing that, we needed to focus our time and energy in different things. And also like just how that journey I feel has really healed our family. And, we're still not perfect, but I feel like we're living the lives that we want to now, which is good.
When you were younger, even as a kid or high school, college age, hey, I want to be my own boss. I want to have my own business. Was that ever in your head?
It really wasn't. I also didn't grow up around entrepreneurs. Like my dad is a longtime professor, my mom a teacher, and so I think mostly what I wanted to do aligned a lot with their core values. So no, I didn't have like this desire as a child at all to be an entrepreneur. That really came, I think, later in life after working in corporate for so long and recognizing that maybe we just weren't the right fit for each other.
I can relate to that. I never thought about it. And you and I have talked about this before, but I never thought about it until I was working for a bunch of them. And then also by necessity at some point, I'm like, oh, I'm not finding the job I want, the career I want. So let's go make one. But I get it. So when you look back on it, do you ever think, I guess, what's your reflection like? I mean, obviously you enjoy doing it, but there's got to be some reflection of like every once in a while I still go, was this the right thing?
Oh yeah.
or oh man, I really miss those giant steady paychecks.
Like and that's the thing. Like I have these moments sometimes where I'm like, did I make the right decision? And it's like anything. We have bad days, right? We have days where we're just like, I wrote another property tax bill or whatever it is, where you're like, is this really what I wanted? Is this really the life that I'm meant to live? And I think the answer is most days I can say definitively I made the right decision. But yeah, we all have 20% of days where we're like, man, it would be way easier just to go back and do the grind. And yeah.
What are the aspects of being a business owner that drive you, the things that you really like, that let you know not only was it the right thing, but it's the thing that keeps you going?
So the autonomy is really big for me. I mean, I love managing my own schedule. I know when I'm the most productive. I get up early in the morning, I do my work. Like I really enjoy the schedule flexibility and also being able to work my life around the things that matter to me. It's like if I have to take time off to go to my kiddos' talent show, I can have that autonomy. I also am just kind of a natural achiever, unfortunately, to my detriment sometimes. So I don't need like sometimes I just have to tell myself slow down. But I like to get things done, and I don't need like this. I don't need an office to make that happen. Like I am a naturally achiever. I'm just going to do it. So I love that I can create my own schedule.
And if you want a project to take 3 hours and not 3 months, you can do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
No, I totally get that. And like for me, I know from 6:30 in the morning to noon, that's my
Is that your like window?
that's the window to really get things done.
Yes,
Like I am most productive before noon.
absolutely.
Well, okay, so if people want to follow along with your path, because I know you do a lot of social media and you constantly put out the things you're working on with your book. I mean, that's the process can be viewed by all. So how can people kind of follow along with that process and see what you're doing?
Yeah, great question. So my website is lieslhays.com. That's my author website. And then also if you want to follow me on Instagram at liesl.hays or also just Liesl Hays on Facebook.
I like that as you put these things out, and this fits with me, my cynical heart. I like that as you put things out, a lot of your stuff is about finding your way through, and it's a positive message. But you also put it out there with a lot of real statements that aren't well, they're a little more smart aleck in the positive. It's not your success stories posters that your teachers used to put on their
No,
classrooms.
it's not. And like Nick, I've recently been really digging deep on this and how I feel like how am I going to fit in the self-development world? Like it's a saturated market, as we all know, it's fine. But I don't fit in like the typical like life coach, live your best life kind of genre. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that genre, but I feel like where I most resonate with people is that I show up and I am honest about life being beautiful and hard and challenging, and that like life is not a big highlight reel. And for me, like I think what I want to help other people do is to feel like as they're going through life that they're like, oh, that's normal. Like feeling that way is normal. It's okay to encounter grief. It's okay to not be positive all the time. And so I think if I had to articulate like what my role is to help you realize that like you're not alone.
Right, that you don't have to always tell yourself door closing means another one opening. That you can embrace the pain, right?
Yes.
And just as much as you embrace the good times.
Yeah, and now you're gonna get me on a topic that I'm really passionate
Well,
about.
go
but
for
I'm
it.
gonna be quick.
No, go for it.
So I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that we believe that pain is not as powerful as happiness. Pain is an equal teacher to joy. It's an equal teacher to happiness. It it helps us move forward and it transforms us into the next person that we're supposed to be. But yet we're always so focused on always be positive, always be happy, reframe that. And sometimes I think the focus on positivity, while good, can also borderline toxicity, right? Because ultimately we are all designed to experience life. And experiencing life means experiencing all the emotions. And I am not the first person to say that. You know, any like wise sage teacher, Buddha, I think, something like that. I guess he was he a big deal? So I'm not the first person to say that, obviously, but I think that my genre of self-help or negative self-help really embraces that concept that we are supposed to feel all the feelings. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's give people another way too. If they want to find out more about the historic Brown and Guest House, if they want to book a stay there, or they have colleagues, family, whatever coming to town, and they want them to stay there and not at their house, how can they find the Browning?
Perfect. So the Browning website is the browningls.com. And then you can follow us on Facebook. We're the Historic Browning Guest House. That's a rebrand. And then we're also the Historic Browning on Instagram.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to wrap this up with a couple of good things. So, if you are talking to other would-be entrepreneurs or other current entrepreneurs looking to move their businesses or start a business in Lee Summit, what are you going to tell them? What's the sales pitch?
Oh, you mean about pivoting?
No, about coming to Lee Summit.
Oh, well, the best part about Lee Summit is that it is a thriving community and we are continuously growing. There's so much happening here. So it is a prime place to have a business and you should probably get in now because I think Lee Summit's just going to continue to expand and become an even cooler community than what it is now. So get in on the ground floor.
There you go. You heard it here first from Liesl Hays, guest house owner and author. Liesl, thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick.